Before he was senator from Florida, Senator Scott was the governor of Florida in the aftermath of the Parkland massacre, and he shepherded through a comprehensive package, a constitutional package of safety and gun laws. I want to talk to him about that today. Senator Scott, welcome back. Normally we talk about your wonderful work as the NRSC chair, but I want you to take us back to the aftermath of Parkland and just explain to the audience what you shepherded through and why you were able to get it done.
Well, the first thing I'll tell you, Hugh, is even when you just think about it, you think about the families, and I've gotten to know a lot of the families, and I stay up with them. I talked to quite a few of them last week, and you just can't imagine this happening to anybody. So when Uvalde happened, it just brought back emotions because you can't imagine this happening to your family. So here's what we did. If you remember, I'd had the terrorist attack at the Pulse nightclub before that. And so with that, what I did there was we added additional terrorist threat teams all across the state with our Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And because the whole focus on all this is let's solve the problem at hand, right? And so when Parkland happened, we immediately, within I think 2 or 3 days, we put together 3 teams of people, one focused on mental health, one focused on the educators from the schools, and one focused on law enforcement. What should we do? Because as we all know, a lot of this is mental health issues. And so we focused on how do we make sure we start doing real assessments of students that have problems and required that they happen at these schools, so we don't have people just turning a blind eye. Because when Parkland happened, a lot of people said, "Oh, we always knew it was going to be that guy. That was the guy we always thought it would be." And so that can't happen if you stop and think about it. That should never happen.
That's happened in Uvalde as well, right, Senator? They knew it was going to be this guy.
Every case, Hugh, every case is different. But one thing that's common is that people say, "Oh yeah, that would be the guy." Of course, yeah, that's what we all thought. Well, that can't be happening, right? I mean, these are our kids and our grandkids. So that's one thing we did. And the next thing we did is we put additional resources in to make sure we are hardened our schools. And then we required all of our schools, our public schools, all of them had to have law enforcement officers on duty when they're open, and they had to do drills and they had to get ready in case something like this happened. So it wasn't like, oh gosh, what do we do now? Can we pull out the book? No, everybody, the students, the teachers, the faculty, everybody had to say, okay, we know what to do, right? So we did that.
How did you fund that, Senator? How did the state of Florida fund the police officer at the school? Because I think 1 or 2 at every K through 12 public and private school ought to have one. But how did you fund it?
So the way Florida funds schools is we have a statewide property tax, and then we fund the schools. So every school district gets the same amount per student. Some of the smaller school districts get some extra, but that way we knew that every school had the opportunity, and we give them capital dollars to build things, and we give them operating dollars to operate the schools. So what we did was we increased money, and it had to go. We'd already been doing some, but all the new money had to go for hardening, period. Then what we did is we said the school districts, we added more money for law enforcement officers. Depending on the school district, we have school districts by county in Florida. Many of them were already doing it. They were teaming up with their sheriff's departments, the police departments, and they were funding their own programs. And so we supplemented that. But every school had the resources. There was no question about it. Every school had the resources to have, at least one law enforcement officer whenever they were open. And then we went through and we put together at the state level, through the Department of Education, we appointed an individual there, Damian Kelly, and his responsibility was to make sure and monitor whether our schools were doing the job of making the schools safer. Then what we did is we said that if you shouldn't have access to a gun if you're threatening harm to yourself, you're threatening harm to somebody else, or you have mental illness. And so we said you couldn't do it you couldn't nobody could do it except through the law enforcement. You had to go to the sheriff's department, police department, and they could go to court.
Check.
Due process.
Explain why that's different from some red flag laws, because that's a key. I've been urging people that's got to go through the police.
You've got to. Well, first off, they're the ones that know, right? They good law enforcement, and we are very blessed. We have great law enforcement, our sheriff's department, police department. They know where the problems are. Okay, they often what they'll tell you, they're limited by what the courts will do, but they know where the problems are, and they're the ones that can do a better job of assessing what the needs are. Now, the school district's got to tell them where the problems are. That's why we made sure the school districts did assessments, real assessments, and we put together teams per school where it was educators and it was parents and it was law enforcement to do assessments of what was going on in that school. So you didn't have something like what happened at Parkland where everybody said, "Oh yeah, that was a guy. We wouldn't even let him into the school." The shooter in Parkland was not allowed in the school. They knew he was a problem. They knew it, and that's what makes you mad about this. So then we did that, and that my understanding through due process that's been used 5,000 times in Florida, and people feel comfortable that it's increased safety. Here's something else we did. I was very vocal about the FBI because the FBI had prior knowledge. I think it was 3 times they'd been called about the shooter at Parkland, and the information didn't go from their call center to the local FBI office or to local law enforcement. And so Chris, I complained a lot, and I want to give it to Director Ray. I've gone out there, and it's in West Virginia. Their call center operation completely revamped their call center operation to make sure there was better coordination between when they get information, and took it very seriously, and it got to either local FBI or local law enforcement. One thing we all can do better is every branch of law enforcement and everybody is just always constantly figure out how do we share information better, because it seems like there will be a case where this didn't happen, but it just seems like there's red flags where somebody's telling us, oh yeah.
Now, Senator, when we come back after break, I'm going to ask you about the 21-year-old age limit, so save that. I want to know how you got it through a Republican legislature. Because, of course, gun activists lean on Republicans, and they are afraid of the government seizing weapons. How did you negotiate? What was the process that you got to yes via? You got 2 or 3 minutes to tell us that.
Yep.
No, go ahead now. I'll come back after the break on the age limit.
Off, for Hugh, I believe in Second Amendment, so I'm not taking away guns. I'm not working on doing anything. I will never do anything to take away guns from law-abiding Americans. But here's what we did. I made the proposal, all right, because I sat down with law enforcement, I sat down with everybody and said, what could, we've got some very responsible 18-year-olds, and then we got some irresponsible 18-year-olds. I said, I'm not going to take away the right to own a gun, have a gun, but basically it has to be, you cannot buy it by yourself. You have to be with your parents. So you cannot buy it until you're 21. You can own it, but you cannot buy it by yourself. And so our parents, Andy Pollack and the Hoyers, Tony Maltato and other parents, they came to Tallahassee and they sat down with the legislature, and the legislature in Florida listened. And so, I put the proposal out there, and I tried to do everything I could to continue to work with, because I'll work with anybody to make sure no one's gun rights are taken away. But if you're threatening harm to somebody, yourself or somebody else, you've got mental illness, come on, you can't have access to a gun.
So when you were governor, how much time did it take? I'm just curious about, I want to manage expectations, and I know you're talking to Senator Cornyn, because you actually did this.
Now, first of all, I think this ought to be done. Anything you do like this ought to be done at the state level, because then it can get changed at the state level, and every state's different. But here's what happened. It happened while we were just right at the beginning of our legislative session. In Florida, we have them once a year for 60 days. And so the legislature was in session. And these parents, they did a really good job. I mean, you have to admire these parents lost their kids. I mean, Andy Pollack with Meadow, and the Hoyers with Luke, and Max Shatner with Alex, and Tony Maltato, and they lost their kids, and they were hell bent on this will never ever happen again, and they have not stopped. I mean, I'm still working with those families to try to get some federal legislation done, but like a clearinghouse. Let's codify. We have a clearinghouse to tell parents What are the best practices? Is your school doing it?
With Florida Senator Rick Scott, as governor of Florida, Senator Scott shepherded through a comprehensive package of school safety and gun legislation that passed a Republican-dominated legislature. Senator, people inside the Beltway can pick up their Washington Post this morning and read what I think about this, and it's online as well. I don't want federal legislation. I want a mad approach from when the drinking age was raised, which is here is money for police departments in exchange for a model statute. But yesterday, the White House press secretary said this from the White House podium, cut number 10.
And when it comes to schools, and I don't know what he said specifically about schools. I know there's been conversation about hardening schools. That is not something that he believes in. He believes that we should be able to give teachers the resources to be able to do the job that they're meant to do at schools.
Senator, I was flabbergasted. I believe 90% of Americans want armed police on school campuses, and there is the president's spokesperson saying no.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, look, I am a big supporter of the Second Amendment, but I want these schools hardened. I want our teachers very comfortable. They can focus their time on teaching. I want our kids and our parents focused on. They know that they can go to a safe school. We do it at our airports. We protect our homes. Why wouldn't we protect our schools? The most precious resource I have is my kids and my grandkids. And so, why wouldn't you want to do that? That doesn't make any sense.
This administration doesn't make any sense on many levels. When you talk to your colleagues across the aisle, there is a threat they will overreach for people. The president started talking about 9mm handguns, which is a non-starter. Do you think they are in the mood to actually empower states to pass laws that fit their state? For example, Maine is a gun-owning state, and Texas is a gun-owning state, and New York isn't. At least New York's political class isn't.
No, they go out there. They go out there. They don't want to do anything. Here's a simple one. Ron Johnson and I went to the Senate floor to do a unanimous consent on the Luke and Alex School Safety Act. It's named after two young boys that were killed at Parkland. All it does is give parents good information about what the best practices are at schools all across the country. And Chuck Schumer goes to the floor, blocks it, and puts out a tweet. He stopped Republicans from allowing more guns in schools. No, the Democrats want to take away your guns. They want to take away your guns. We have a bill that they also blocked called the Eagles Act. That's the mascot at Parkland School. It said would have a U.S. Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center put a greater focus on school violence prevention. They blocked They blocked that. So
because they want people
to take away your guns
to surrender your weapons. Now, will they change? Because they're going to get wiped out in the fall. Because you are running the National Republican Senatorial Committee, you know what it looks like. I know what the House map looks like. If they stand in the way of hardening schools and providing resources for police at school, they will dig their defunding the police mantra deeper. Do any of them? Does Angus King? Does Chris Coons? Two of the serious people. Do they come over to you and say, "Let's get this done," Senator Scott?
You would hope, but so far they haven't. Murphy went out and he stopped me on the floor and said, "What'd you do in Florida?" And then he went out and he said, "Hey, Rick Scott's working with me to get a bill done." These guys are, they're disingenuous about this stuff. But no, they're not talking to me about this. There's some logical things we can do, but let's focus on, don't take away guns. Let's focus on school safety. But look, if you are threatening harm to somebody, including me, your kids, anybody, why do you have access to a gun? There ought to be a due process. It goes through the law enforcement, goes through the courts, should be temporary. But there's a way to do that. I don't want a kid. We don't want any child in this country ever to be shot again. This is horrible.
So, Senator, the last question is about the 21-year-old, because that provision has been misreported to me. If I understand what you just said, the Florida law that you shepherded said if you are under 21, you can only buy certain weapons if a parent is with you. Is that what it said?
Yeah. So prohibiting individuals from 20 years old from purchasing firearms by themselves. You can go own it. So your parents can go with you, go buy it, and you can own it, but you cannot purchase it by yourself.
Did that survive court challenge?
So far it has. I've not seen anybody. I've not heard it being questioned yet in Florida, and I think I would have if it had. But it's common sense. You can't go out, and drink liquor until you're 21, but it doesn't prevent you from being able to go own a gun. You just can't go buy it by yourself.
That it just makes so much sense to me. Senator Scott, last question. Do you think the schools of Florida are significantly and qualitatively safer now than they were the day before of the Parkland massacre?
Here's the way I look at it, Hugh. Clearly, if they followed the things that we passed, yes, right? But the school districts are run by the counties, are run per county, and so they're supposed to have the law enforcement there. But there were some counties that didn't do it immediately.
Oh,
I mean, we put up the money and they didn't do it.
Did they give any reasons why? I don't understand intransigence.
What everybody thinks. Well, we need to spend the money a different way, and and so and they just look. I mean, that's what's great about our country. We all have individual ideas, but that's why the idea. Tell people what you should know. Like we have Jeb Bush set up a real good process to rank our schools based on academics. So Max Shatner, one of the parents that lost his son, he's worked his butt off to try to get a national database for you as a parent to know, is that school using the best practices? Okay, and Democrats of course block that. That works because you know what? What did I do? As soon as Uvalde happened, I called both my daughters, right? And I said, have you talked to your school? Have you gone through with your school to know exactly what that school is doing on school safety? Because if every parent does that, guess what? That school will do drills. They'll harden the school. They'll make sure it's safe.
Senator Scott,
got to get involved.
I really appreciate your spending the time with us. I hope you're out there having conversations with every member of the media who will give you the chance to explain the Florida model that I credit you and your colleagues with. And I hope the Senate studies it as a model statute to incentivize states to take money for funding for school safety. Thank you, Senator Scott.
All right. Have a good day, Hugh. Bye-bye.